What is the mission of the U.S. General Services Administration's Federal Acquisition Service, FAS? What is the Federal Marketplace Strategy? And how is FAS changing the way it does business? I'll explore these questions and so much more with our very special guest, Sonny Hashmi, Commissioner of the Federal Acquisition Service within the General Services Administration, GSA. As you think of the work that you're doing, Sonny, what are some of the, say top management challenges that you've faced, and how have you sought to address those challenges?
Absolutely. So the first that I mentioned already is talent. I think as we move forward, the government and frankly our society writ large is about to face a brand new set of, but a whole era of new challenges around talent acquisition, engagement, and retention, and getting the right people with the right skills engaged in the right kind of work so that they can personally thrive, and as a result, the organization that they belong to also thrives. We're coming to an end of a population, a generation that has served the American public diligently and effectively. However, I think one of the things that, generally speaking, across government, we haven't done a good job of for the last 20 years is to continue to make the government an exciting place to work and creating pathways for new entrants into this environment where people want to play a role, making it easy for them to join, making it faster for them to join, making it a long-term career option for new entrants. Because without that pipeline, we're going to continue to face a shortage of existing talent that has the skills we need. So in our case, for example, we rely heavily on people with the contract management skill sets. We call them 1102s, or program managers who manage and oversee complex programs, project managers, technologists. All those skills are very hard to find and increasingly becoming challenging. So this is a challenge that's only going to exacerbate unless specific steps are taken to lower the barriers of entry, to seek out new populations that historically have not engaged in public service before, to create pathways for them to join and thrive and grow their careers with us. And so we've done a lot of work on this space. Much more needs to be done. In the technology space, for example, we have a new program that we've started about a year ago called the U.S. Digital Core that allows early stage career professionals in the technology space to come and join government, not as interns, but fully blown professionals with real work to do. And that program not just allows for the recruitment part of this process, but also invests in continuous training and uplifting their skill sets. So that once you've joined the government, you have a career path in front of you where you can grow your skill sets and do more meaningful things. We're working on developing a similar pipeline approach to contracting officers. It's another area that's highly sought after, and not very many talented individuals are available in this space. So we want to create the next core that comes in and solves for supply chain challenges on behalf of the federal government. And so that's an area that I think is going to be a management challenge no matter who you are in government, wherever you are. You need to have a sharp focus. If one of your top 3 priorities is not recruitment and talent management, then you're missing a step. The other thing that I think has been lacking, frankly, and we need to continue to uplift is the larger conversation around technology modernization, and specifically a focus on customer experience. What I mean by that is that the government certainly spends a lot of money on technology. Writ large, the federal government spends close to $100 billion a year on operating, maintaining, and enhancing its technology systems. But that's not enough. The focus on how do we improve our business processes, how do we leverage the power of technology and data and insights and analytics and machine learning and all these capabilities to benefit the business that we're trying to drive. That opportunity space is only very nascent. I'll give you an example. FAS manages somewhere around 75 million products and services on our products catalog. Now we're living in a global economy. Many of these products come from manufacturing places all over the world. They have componentry made in all sorts of countries. We have good actors and bad actors all trying to participate in this marketplace for various reasons. The ability for a human to look at all the products that are being offered by a particular company and navigate over 400 compliance checks to say, is this product made in the country that it's being claimed to? Is this product made in America? Is it made in a TAA compliant country? Is it part of a prohibitive list that we should be worried about? Is the price reasonable and fair? All these checks is impossible. A human can only do that work to a certain level of scale. So we have this tremendous potential to train machines to do this routine work at scale that humans can't, so that the human decision making is much more intelligent based on data and insights that are gained from technology. Those are the kind of opportunities we're pursuing, and every agency should ask themselves, how can I leverage technology and modernize our back-end systems and processes to really supercharge the mission I'm trying to drive? And lastly, I mentioned something called customer experience. It's not something like a pretty website is called better customer experience. It's really thinking about the end-to-end process that your stakeholders go through, whether that stakeholder is a veteran applying for benefits, whether it's a small business applying for a loan, whether it's a vendor trying to get on a GSA schedule. What is the experience that they go through? What are the bottlenecks and barriers that get in the way? And how do we continue to reduce those barriers through better online capabilities, but also using the breadth of all the things we do, in-person, call centers, communication and training, all these things. How can we bring all of this to bear to create a better experience for the customer, for the stakeholders that we deal with, that we work with? That is an important aspect that I think needs a lot more focus. I'm glad that for the first time ever, it's an important aspect of the President's Management Agenda. There's a lot of work going on in this space that I'm happy to talk about. But those are the three things I would say as managers, as leaders, we should have a keen interest in solving for and improving as we move forward.
Yeah, that's terrific. I was wondering, this is not your first stint in federal service, Sonny. So what surprised you most since taking over the leadership role at FAS?
I would say, So I have had the benefit of serving GSA before, but in a very different capacity. I was a CIO for GSA for a number of years. And at the time, a lot of the focus I had and my contemporaries, my partners had, was around the foundational aspects of technology modernization. How do we move our workloads to the cloud? How do we secure our systems and data centers? How do we reduce cost and gain efficiencies? Those things remain important, of course. However, I think that next set of challenges that I mentioned earlier, how do we actually unlock business value through smart application of modern technology, is still early days. What surprised me as I came back to FAS is two things. First, while I had a good appreciation of the breadth of impact that FAS creates, I never really understood to the extent that FAS adds value every day to the effective operations of the federal government. People don't realize that nothing big happens in the federal government without us playing a role. Now, certainly, we play a supporting role in many cases, but it's an important role to play. Everything from hurricane relief and response to resettling refugees from our Afghan partners to finding ways to tackle climate change and address climate resiliency, to improving the cybersecurity posture of government and reducing the risk from foreign entities gaining access to our computer systems and data. I mean, the list goes on. In each one of these things, from vaccine responses and making sure that shots get in American arms, to making sure that people can order COVID test kits and get them delivered to their houses. Every single one of these major initiatives that the government has been championing, FAS has a role to play. So the biggest surprise to me is how broad our mission is and how many different ways we show up to add value to Americans. I call FAS kind of the best analogy I can think of is that in every household, there's a drawer, usually in the kitchen or somewhere near the entryway. And that drawer has all sorts of different random things. Sometimes it doesn't make sense why the things are in there, but they're all equally important. That drawer has a pair of scissors and keys and, chapstick and everything else. And like all those things serve a critical purpose in the day-to-day operations of that house. But sometimes on the surface, it looks like it's a hodgepodge of different things that don't make sense. FAS, in the most admirable manner, plays that role. We do so much, and we play a role in so many different aspects of the government's operations that sometimes it looks like we do just too many things that are just all in one organization. But each one of those things matters very directly to the things that Americans take for granted every day and the effective functioning of their government. And certainly when those things are not being done as effectively as they can be, they're very visible. So I'm very proud of the work that we do. I've been most surprised about the impact that we can create. And frankly, I've been surprised at the heroics and the dedication of the staff who just work day in and day out doing a lot of routine tasks, a lot of repetitive tasks just to make sure that the government operates every day effectively and securely. And my dedication, again, a reference to how do we use technology to improve that experience, is also a nod to recognizing that there is a lot of burden that we can reduce on our workforce by automating some of these routine tasks so that they can focus their energies on more important things. And that keeps me up every night. So that is an important aspect of what we do and what my priorities are.
Shifting gears a bit, Sonny, you mentioned earlier that your organization leverages the buying power of the federal government by, negotiating prices on many products and services required by federal agencies, for daily operations. And I was wondering if you could maybe underscore a little bit your strategic vision for FAS. And where I'm going with this is, what are your key priorities, and how do they, using that word, complement or align with the administrator's top priorities?
Absolutely. So I'll share a couple of things very briefly. First of all, the markets that we operate in, both in our personal lives and in the government or in any organization, corporate environment, are changing rapidly, right? So think back 15 years when you wanted to take a vacation to the Bahamas. How did you plan that vacation? Or let's say, think back 20 years. You probably went to a travel agent. You looked at some pamphlets. You probably called an airline or called somebody who could help you come up with some options. Today, that's unthinkable. Today, you have options at your fingertips. You can negotiate prices. You can find discounts. You can compare and contrast different options as an individual in your life. The same kind of thing is happening in the markets we work in. First of all, supply chains have become global. Suppliers of the commodities that we need, and we need commodities to operate every day, are now shifting their manufacturing plants and distribution chains in a global sense, right? So one thing we need to understand is we're in this part of this global economy now. So when we need something, and especially when we need that at scale, we need to understand who our suppliers are that we trust, and what does that trust look like, right? Does that trust look like a commitment to delivery within a certain number of days when we order something? Does that trust look like a commitment to a certain pricing that we pre-negotiated? So all of this change leads us to rethink how we create this marketplace. Ultimately, yes, pricing is important. We want to make sure that the government's buying power is being used to negotiate best pricing. What's bigger than that, though, is creating a marketplace that thrives. Because our job is also to create an environment where companies, especially small businesses, can come and succeed. They have access to opportunities. They can compete effectively. They can show their best, they can actually compete based on their strengths and not just through regulation or, some sort of a contrived environment. All of those are important equally, right? So one of the things that the Biden-Harris administration, the president, has made very clear from the very beginning is that the federal buying power is an important lever for us to actuate, to drive many different priorities, not just priority of fair pricing. And by the way, don't get me wrong, we negotiate pricing for the federal government that consistently outperforms any other environment consistently. When agencies buy through FAS, the discounts that we have pre-negotiated consistently far exceed anything an agency can do on their own, or anything that you can see in the private in your personal life, right? So not taking the foot off the gas on that front at all. However, one of the things that occurs to me is that if you're going to move other levers, if you're going to move, we're also going to drive sustainability across the federal supply chain. If you're going to increase the level of security and cybersecurity and reduce supply chain risk and improve opportunities for small businesses, now we have a balanced scorecard that we have to balance all together, right? And how you manage this across tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of companies and suppliers, hundreds of millions of products, is through a data-driven approach. Historically, for too long, the government has bought things through of course, everything we do is through a regulatory framework that we call the Federal Acquisition Regulation. However, within that regulatory framework, the primary mechanism to negotiate and buy products has been through a one-to-one conversation and negotiation on discounting. We are signing a contract. A contracting officer and a vendor are going to work together to negotiate best pricing, and we're going to hope that that is the best we can get. However, we don't have a peripheral view of what else is going on. So as an example, if you're about to buy a table in your life and you go to a store and you know that store to be the only store in the world, and you say, how much does a table cost? The company could say, hey, our table costs $2,000. And you may say, well, could I get a discount because I'm an important person or I buy lots of tables every year? And they may say, okay, in that case, we'll give you a table for $1,800. However, if you look at data, you will realize that there are many other furniture suppliers. They provide many different types of tables, and some as cheap as $100, right? So that data drives insights that allow us to be much more strategic about what an average table should cost. And that is category management. So our strategy at FAS is to lean in on data as the key driver for everything that we want to drive in the federal acquisition environment. When we have line item data around what people buy, how much they pay for it, what is the list price and how much the average discount is, at what points in the year those discounts change based on alignment to a vendor's fiscal year goals, for example, or external factors, and how do we leverage those kinds of trends in our favor? How do we bring a buying power together? How many tables are being bought across the federal government? Can we buy them once from one supplier to drive even deeper discounts? How do we make sure that we increase the number of small business suppliers in the mix? How do we make sure that we have data on what the sustainability and the carbon impact is of the overall end-to-end process that manufactures that table? When you collect this data, now you have insights, and now you have a much smarter buyer that can negotiate on multiple dimensions. And so that's my strategy, is to lean in on data and then get that data in the hands of the people who are negotiating on behalf of the government every day, and train those people to then use this data for the benefit of the American people. That is something that sounds like a very straightforward thing, or sounds like yeah, of course, this makes sense. But unfortunately, the government has never really been able to done that at scale. And so at FAS, we're putting all the mechanics in place to do just that. And in fact, it's already showing results. We are seeing hundreds of thousands of products that have been in their supply chain that don't meet our criteria, but have missed and slipped through the cracks sometimes and somehow. So we've been over this year, we've actually working together over the last year, have removed over 500,000 products from our supply base that either are not misrepresented in the terms of country of origin, or don't meet the priorities for Made in America laws, or don't meet the priority of sustainability or cybersecurity and other kind of reasons like that. Similarly, we are continuing to increase the number of small businesses that are in our supply base. And so those results are early, but I'm very encouraged about how a focus on data and insights that lead from that data is allowing us to be smarter about where our exposure is, where our risks are, and how we negotiate better on behalf of the government.
That's wonderful. And I'm wondering, Sonny, when you think of the vision and the work that you're doing, the accomplishments that you're going to realize, how does the federal marketplace strategy factor into all this? What is it? And maybe you could tell us how it has evolved or where it's going.
Absolutely. So generally speaking, the federal marketplace strategy is an initiative that started a few years ago. Over the last year and a half, we've really refocused it on a set of very core focus areas. So essentially, it's an umbrella set of initiatives that all tie to exactly achieving the outcomes that I just talked about. How do we engage with our supply base? How do we make it easy for them to do business with us? How do we collect the right amount of data, analyze it, and make decisions out of that data and get it in the hands of the people who are making these decisions? And also, how do we make it easier for our customers, other agencies, to buy through us, to get the data that they need, to make comparative analyses and so forth, right? So the federal market strategy sort of began with these kind of four cornerstone initiatives. One of the things that we wanted to do was to reduce complexity. We used to have many different multiple award schedule contracts, so vendor wouldn't know which one is the right one for them. So we consolidated all of them, so it's one place to go. So no matter what you're selling today, if you're selling tables and chairs, or if you're selling satellite communications, you can go to one place and start the conversation. We are modernizing something called catalog management, which is the back end for how all this data comes together and how all these insights are generated and how we apply all these rules. Like I mentioned, there's about 400 business rules that need to be applied on every single product that we have to make a decision on whether or not we include it into our marketplace or not. 400. So imagine a human being going through a checklist of 400 decision points before one product gets added. It's an untenable situation. So automating all of that becomes a priority. And so catalog management is our effort to automate and streamline a lot of those processes. Commercial platforms is another initiative that is part of the same conversation. Is like, okay, what are the things that FAS needs to do because they're so specialized and so unique to the government that we need to put a lot of effort and focus into making sure the right things show up at the right places versus what are the things that are just commoditized? Somebody needs to buy a ream of paper. Paper is paper is paper, right? We can negotiate a good price on paper, so can many commercial providers. So what are the situations where for low dollar transactional type purchases that somebody can put on a purchase card, how do we develop trusted relationships with different suppliers in the marketplace who manage their own marketplaces, right? So we're working with Amazon and Fisher Scientific, and increasingly we're going to be working with additional companies in that space to say, hey, can a government employee just buy from you guys? But if they do, can you give us all the data? What did they buy? How much did they buy? What prices did they pay? Which small businesses supported that? All of those kind of things. And also, could you make sure that some of our expectations are met in your platform so that people are not buying non-compliant products, for example? So those are the kind of initiatives that we started with. Ultimately, though, I want to talk about FMP in 3 terms, actually 4 terms. The goal of all the things that happen within this FMP or Federal Marketplace Strategy is there are 4 stakeholder groups that we want to do better by. Number 1, we need to focus on buyer experience. You have an agency customer, a purchasing officer who's about to support a deployment for the Navy. I'm giving an example. Or you have a VA medical clinic that needs a particular commodity because they need to operate tomorrow. How do they go from we have this need to we know who can provide this need? What is a fair price to pay for it? How do we order it and have a guarantee that it will be delivered on time and of the quality that we expect? That entire end-to-end buyer experience, we need to continue to improve it. There's many aspects to it. There's many tools, et cetera, and process and streamlining and so forth. But that's an area that is under the FMP umbrella, and we continue to make progress on that front. Number 2, we need to make sure that the supplier experience gets the same amount of focus. Who are you? What products do you want to sell? What are the prices that you want to offer? Are you compliant? We have many different needs for engaging with the supplier community, but it's very complicated to do business with us sometimes. So we want to continue to streamline that experience because ultimately the complexities in that interaction keep many small businesses and innovative companies out of the marketplace because it's just too hard for them to engage. Number 2. So number 3 is we want to create a thriving products marketplace that has all the things that we talked about incorporated into it: sustainability, small business focus, cybersecurity, price analysis, all of those kind of things. And that goes back to the work that we're doing in catalog management and others. So ultimately, we're going to lead to an environment where somebody could go to a marketplace, find the right product for their need, pay the right price for it, and transact right in the same place. And then similarly, the area that doesn't get a lot of focus, but turns out that about 70% of federal purchasing, 70+% of the dollars that the federal government spends with suppliers is on services, not products. So here's a 70% of the marketplace that is even more complex. What is a service? What do you buy? How do you negotiate? When you hire or contract a software engineer, is a software engineer a software engineer a software engineer? No. I mean, depending on which skills you have and how many years of experience. So all of that requires a rethink and a discussion around how do we make sure that the right services are packaged, delivered, what are the right outcomes that we're trying to drive, how do we hold people accountable? All those kinds of things require rethink on the services marketplace. So that's what the FMP is. Ultimately, its goal to improve the outcomes for suppliers, for buyers, for our workforce around these angles. And so we basically use that as an umbrella kind of initiative. And then underneath it, there's specific projects that lead to improvements in one or more of these areas.
So, Sonny, I'd like to discuss the important role that GSA plays in the replacement of the federal government's legacy technology systems. And in particular, how does TTS and 18F work directly with government agencies on their IT modernization journey? And perhaps you could illustrate some of the successful collaborations. What are some of the challenges being faced in this area?
Absolutely. So, listen, first of all, for those of you who don't know, the TTS, or the Technology Transformation Service, is a part of the Federal Acquisition Service. It was an organization that started about 10 years ago with a singular focus on helping agencies be more effective as they modernize their technology. TTS, within TTS, is an organization called 18F, which think of 18F as internal consultants within the federal government. The 18F team works very closely with all agencies who are embarking on a technology modernization project to help them think through how to scope it, how to organize it, what are the best practices, do user research, and then ultimately help them become smarter buyers. One of the things that I know without any doubt is that nobody, not government agencies, nor consulting firms and suppliers, want to be part of a bad project. Nobody wants to go and spend years and millions of dollars only to lead to a bad outcome. And we unfortunately have too many of those stories in the federal government historically. So TTS and 18F were designed from the very beginning to prevent that from happening through knowledge transfer, through partnership, to support. Many of the legacy systems we've been working on across the government are 30, 40, even 50 years old. We're currently consolidating and updating those platforms because across the government, that's a lot been driven by cost reduction targets and cybersecurity challenges, and then, like I mentioned, increasingly around customer experience opportunities that require back-end modernization. But ultimately, it doesn't make any sense to keep building and supporting something that won't be able to take us into the future expectations that we need to do. So, technology modernization across the federal government is one of the biggest priorities for this administration. In fact, both the administration and the Hill have partnered to spend over $1 billion, or set aside over $1 billion through the Technology Modernization Fund to make sure that agencies have access to capital to invest in these modernization projects. The way TTS and 18F work is that within TTS, 18F and another organization called the Centers of Excellence are acquisition consultants that have historically worked on, discovered, refined, and published best practices to reduce the risk of technology projects in both state and local governments and federal government. And they do that by adopting best practices from the private sector, agile principles, DevSecOps, with performance-based service contracts, right? So there's no it's innovative in the sense that when you adopt and personify and internalize these best practices, it turns out that the results speak for themselves every single time you're able to drive a better outcome. But it's almost like a culture shift. It requires a dedication and discipline that many times agencies don't know how to get there from here on their own. And that's why we can come in and help. Agencies ultimately can buy smarter right now with the methods, tools, and templates that are available in the 18F de-risking guide, which is a document that we created for any agency to consume that documents all these best practices. It's called De-risking Government Technology Field Guide. And as a result, agencies can deliver a better experience to the citizens and have a much more successful project. So that's the goal of these programs, where we've seen them work very effectively, and they work constantly across the entire federal government, is that their impact outlasts just that one engagement. Because not only do they go in and help an agency think about a particular procurement or particular project, but the best practices that leave behind then have greater impact in that agency's future projects that may come along. 18F partners with agencies to improve the user experience of government services by helping them build and buy technology. So, as an example, as many of you know, October was Cybersecurity Month. 18F is, for example, currently partnering with agencies that specialize in that space, including the Department of Homeland Security and CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. This is where we can take the best practices that exist in government and copy and paste them for the benefit of every other agency. And so that's the value that they provide. Lastly, I wanted to mention that we've deployed a cross-functioning team to work on a new experience for the .gov registrar. So the .gov registrar is basically the authoritative body that assigns .gov URLs to any state, local, federal government agency. The only place where the U.S. government, the only place that U.S. governments, including states and territories, localities, tribes, and federal agencies, can receive a trusted .gov domain. So by working closely with CISA through the 18F team, not only are we going to be able to create a great experience for agencies to be able to leverage that, but also increase trust in government. Ultimately, citizens, when they engage with government, they know that they're working with a trusted entity, and this is just one of the ways to do it.
Would you tell us more about the work around building supply chain resiliency and securing the supply chain?
That's a great question. And by the way, there's two aspects to this challenge that I want to highlight. One is the overall security and risk surface of the supply chain. How do we understand it? How do we reduce it over time so that we can continue to reduce and de-risk the supply chain overall? The second aspect is resiliency. How do we enable the supply base that we work with to be more resilient in the face of cyber challenges, but also to secure their own subsequent supply chains so that they know that when they provide a product or service, including software, for example, that the government relies on, that they have internal controls within their organizations that are securing their own code base, their releases, and their product development cycles. So just taking a step back, Executive Order 14028 sets a stage for the need to reassess the cybersecurity posture government-wide for all of our supply chain. And it's defined a strategy to move agencies towards the same level of maturity. Now, understand that software does not just mean the software that runs on our computers. Every single aspect of our personal lives today have a component of software. When you turn up the thermostat in your house to make it warmer, there's software involved. When you run the dishwasher at night, there's software involved. And similarly in government, every single thing that we use, from security products to physical security products to personal productivity capabilities, building management, logistics capabilities, vehicles, everything has software embedded in them. And so when you look at the scope of this challenge, it's ever increasing the surface area of the challenge. And we want to make sure that we apply these best practices and policies to all of those different categories. Our top priority is to maximize customer value and mission productivity, of course. And so we have to ensure acquisition and category activities align with cybersecurity policies and objectives. It's not just enough for us to say, here's the new regulations, everybody has to comply. We have to actively go out of our way and reach out to these communities and help them understand and develop internal controls to assess the security of their software. As an example, one of the areas that we're working on at FAS, which is a key focus area for the administration, is to deliver and deploy electrification technology across the nation. As you know, under the infrastructure bill, the president had made a commitment to deploy as many as 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations across the nation. And within the federal government, about another many tens of thousands will be deployed over the coming years. Now, each one of these charging stations is a network connected device. So ultimately, historically, that industry has not been very up to speed on what the cybersecurity expectations of the federal government are. So as an example, we've been proactively working with the suppliers in that community to help them understand what NIST standards to follow, how to comply, how to document, how do we test and validate those products so that we are pre-staging those products. So when an agency purchases a charging station, for example, and deploys them, or when a tribal organization purchases a tribal charging station and deploys them on tribal territory, or a state or city agency does that all of that cybersecurity expectations are tested and built in. They don't have to do that validation over and over and over again. That's just one example on how this executive order is driving the right outcomes. Ultimately, making sure vendors have incorporated into their software development processes best practices defined by NIST is the goal. And one thing I wanted to mention is that M2218, which is the OMB memo that codifies this executive order and provides implementation guidance, is leading to rulemaking. So one of the things that is underway right now is the Federal Acquisition Regulation has a draft rule that is out for comment. Want to make sure that anybody who's listening, who is part of a company that is building software that you sell to the federal government or make available to the federal government, participates in that rulemaking. One of the things we don't want to do is create such burden for software providers that it's increasingly, it's even harder to do business with the government, because it's easy for us to pass a regulation, but we want to do it in a way that actually adds value to your operation and, of course, protects the cybersecurity posture of the enterprise. And so we want to partner with you all. We want to hear from you and your ideas on how we can make that rule the most streamlined way we can, and what are the better ways and other ways that we can be thinking about increasing the cybersecurity posture of our overall enterprise. So I've called this particular challenge the challenge of the decade, because, and truly so, the surface area is so large and the risk is at a point which is unsustainable, that unless we take significant action now, we will continue to have increasing challenges, not only for the next decade, but beyond. And the challenge is significant enough that not only do we need to just take actions today, but we need to continuously put effort and focus on the cybersecurity and overall supply chain risk management aspect of the federal government for a sustained amount of time until it's fully embedded into everything we do.
This has been the Business of Government Hour, a conversation with Sonny Hashmi, Commissioner of the Federal Acquisition Service within the U.S. General Services Administration, GSA. Be sure to join us next time for another informative, insightful, and in-depth conversation on improving government leadership and its effectiveness. Until then, subscribe, download, or listen to the entire interview at iTunes or in your favorite podcast app, and as always at businessofgovernment.org.